Hello, everybody. I'm happy to welcome you to this academic IELTS reading lesson. Today, we're going to focus on the matching information question type. And this is quite an infamous question type. A lot of students do not like the matching information questions because they tend to be very specific and there's a lot of information to go through. But don't worry, I'm going to take you on a journey with this IELTS question type, and we're going to look at some common tricks, some great tips, and I'll take you through a step-by-step example. First thing I just want to cover is some basic information about this matching information question type. As you'll see here on the left-hand side, we have pieces of information that serve as the question. And here on the right, we have our passage. And let me just show you here. We have our passage separated into paragraphs. And basically, this question type is asking you to understand various details and specific information. You see that all of these pieces of information are quite specific. They could include details or examples, as you see here. It could include reasons or references, summaries, explanations. We'll look over the most common types today. And this type of question will call for your ability to scan for specific information. Now, I like to think of scanning as reading with a headlight. So you are not reading for general information. You're reading to find specific keywords and specific information. And that's part of the reason why this question type is so difficult to many students. But like I said, don't worry, we'll get through it. And next, I'm going to show you the steps that we'll be taking to approach this question type. Okay, so I've listed the 3 steps that we're going to look at today. Firstly, we're going to read the information. So before we even look at the passage, we're going to go through the pieces of information that have been given to us. And then we're going to go along to step 2, comprehend the information that's given to us and highlight. So what does this mean? Basically, with comprehend, we want to make sure that we absolutely understand the information. This is crucial with this question type because the information that we're going to be looking for in the passage is more than likely going to appear differently in the text. So basically, just keep in mind that the information you read in step 1 will not be worded the same in the passage. This is what makes this question type so difficult. So a really great way to understand and dissect the information is, of course, to highlight or underline the information and also paraphrase. This is a very important step. Basically, if we prepare the information in a different way in step 2, we'll be prepared to look out for various options and different wording in the text. And then once we've done this preparation work, steps 1 and 2, we are ready to scan the passage in step 3. Here we are with our step-by-step example. On the left-hand side, you'll see steps 1 and 2, and on the right-hand side, you'll see the information. And of course, above the information, we have our lovely instructions, which are always something that we need to pay attention to. So we have a reading passage, which we'll see shortly, and the reading passage has 6 paragraphs labeled A through F. And notice we have 6 pieces of information. However, if we look here at this lovely note, you may use any letter more than once. So that means that any paragraph letter could be used more than once. So it isn't a given that, for example, if you have A, B, C, D, and E, it is not a given that the last question is F. So we cannot use process of elimination here. And that's also something that makes this question type a bit tricky. All right, so I've cleared our screen. Just always keep in mind that the directions will offer you really important information, so never skip the directions. But like I said, we have 6 pieces of information here, so 6 questions. And we're going to start with step 1. So the first step and the second step, with time and with practice and expertise, you can combine these 2 steps. But for now, I would suggest taking it one step at a time just to really break down this example and make sure that you're understanding everything. So I'm going to do step 1 first, followed by step 2. And in step 1, I'm just going to get a general idea of each piece of information. So this will help me understand what the passage will be about and what I have to look for during the exam. So let's just read it together. Number 27, an explanation of the factors affecting the transmission of information. Already we know that something about information is going to be included in this passage. Number 28, an example of how unnecessary information can be omitted. So here we know we're looking for an explanation and an example. Number 29, a reference to Shannon's attitude to fame. So we know that someone, his last name or her last name, will be Shannon. Because remember, in the IELTS exam, you may also just see last names, which refer to researchers or scientists or anyone. Okay, number 30, details of a machine capable of interpreting incomplete information. So we're also looking at machines or instruments. Number 31, a detailed account of an incident involving information theory. And number 32, a reference to what Shannon initially intended to achieve in his research. Okay, so we know that Shannon is a man. So in general, we see that we're looking at something about information theory. We're looking at someone, Shannon, who has been important in information theory, and we'll have to look for explanations, examples, references, also details. Okay, now let's go ahead to step 2, and this will take some time. So we want to comprehend and highlight the information that we've just read. Okay, we need to make sure that we really understand this information. And the reason why is because the information we'll be looking for in the text is going to appear differently. This is perhaps the biggest piece of information that we really need to understand about the matching information question type. You're going to see paraphrased information in the text. Because if this information was included word for word in the text, it would be far too easy. So we're going to closely read this information and understand, dissect, underline, and think of potential ways that this information could be included in the passage. So let's start with number 27, the original phrase, an explanation of the factors affecting the transmission of information. Now, let's look for keywords. I would say here, transmission of information, okay? These are the key words. And so if you want to think of paraphrasing, think of synonyms. This is a great way to go about doing that. I wouldn't necessarily think of a synonym for information because that's quite general and that's included in almost every piece of information, but think of words, synonyms for transmission, okay? A synonym, for example, for transmission could be transfer, okay? And you don't have to think of a ton. You don't have to think of 5 or 6 different synonyms, but just keep in mind that there are other ways to say these words. So we'll think of transfer, for example, for number 27. Okay, number 28, an example of how unnecessary information can be omitted. I would say here keywords would be unnecessary because that is a key feature of number 28. It is something that pulls this apart from the rest of the pieces of information, and also omitted. And a great way to say unnecessary, a synonym, could be something like not necessary, or an adjective such as redundant, okay? Just keep in mind, think of all these synonyms. And omitted, you could say another word, a synonym could be disposed of or gotten rid of, something along these lines. Okay, now number 29, a reference to Shannon's attitude to fame. Whenever you see a person, it's a really good idea to underline that name. And another keyword would be, for example, fame, okay? Because we know that Shannon became famous for something, and we want to understand what it is and his attitude. But Shannon, the name is important, and also fame. So paraphrased, we could think of another way to say fame, which could be celebrity status, for example, or popularity, okay? But keep in mind that Shannon is a very good clue for number 29. Number 30, details of a machine capable of interpreting incomplete information. Keywords here would be interpreting. Again, it's the first time we've come across this word, or the fact that it's a machine. Machine is also quite important. And another one could be incomplete. These are the three keywords that really pull apart number 30. Now, different ways to say interpreting, we could say understand, for example, or a different way to say incomplete is unfinished or not complete, okay? You might also see here capable. You might also see this word listed as its ability, because if you're capable of something, you are able to do something. So always keep in mind that you can see certain roots or certain parts of words that might be used again. Number 31, we see a detailed account of an incident involving information theory. So here we have another incident. I would highlight that. And then, of course, information theory. I think theory is probably the biggest key and the biggest clue for number 31. And another way to say, for example, account, we could say a detailed description, for example, or another way to say incident could be perhaps an occasion or a time in this information theory. And then number 32, a reference to what Shannon initially intended to achieve in his research. Again, we have Shannon, that's a great clue. And initially is a very good keyword here because it shows that it comes before something else. And we could say achieve in research, for example. Initially, another way to say initially could be beforehand or before something else or at first. Achieve could be to accomplish or to set his mind and complete a goal, for example. So you could make little notes in your margin here of these synonyms, or you could just keep them in your mind and keep them fresh for when you have to scan the passage. But it's really important to paraphrase and to think of synonyms because that will already prepare your mind for reading the passage. Okay, I'm going to clear our screen. And on the left-hand side, we can show the underlines. And you can do this and read the different explanations. You can read the different synonyms that we came up with. We basically have just done this together. All right, now our next step will be to scan the passage. So we've done our prep work and it's time to put this to the test. And we're going to read and scan for the information here in our detailed information pieces. Okay. Now, you can underline or circle sentences in the text that you think could help you. And after you've underlined and scanned for this information, we're going to start answering the questions. Okay. So if you note here, number 4, in step 4, a trick in this question type is to reuse keywords. So keywords that we've seen together in these pieces of information. A trick is to reuse them in different areas that have nothing to do with the questions. And this is to throw us off track. So I'm also going to show you an example of how to avoid these common pitfalls with the matching information question type. Something else to keep in mind with this question type is that the answers do not come in order. So for example, if you find that B is the correct answer for number 28, that does not mean that 27 is A and 29 is C. The answers do not come in order. it would be far too easy. So we're just going to read the information as it comes with our keywords in mind and reflecting on the information we've read and do our best that way. Okay, now since we're looking just at paragraphs A through F, it really doesn't help to read this beginning portion. It's probably just to give you some context, but we have the context already because we have looked at our pieces of information beforehand. So we can already skip the first section. So I'm going to go straight to paragraph A, and I'm just going to scan for information. And I'm going to scan for those keywords we looked at in our information. Okay, and just from looking and scanning with a headlight, I already see something that catches my attention. An event took place, okay, which demonstrated one of the many applications of information theory. So, information theory, I remember, was here in number 31, a detailed account of an incident involving information theory. And if you recall, another way to say incident, what did we say, was a happening or an event. And so just based on this sentence alone, I would be very confident that a detailed account of an incident involving information theory is included in paragraph A. So I would provisionally write 31 as A. I'll clear our screen and continue downwards. Okay, so we have B, and I'm going to just scan again for information. Now I already see Shannon, okay, and it's the first time he's mentioned, and we know that because it has his first name as well. And so we know that something about Shannon could be in paragraph B. And I see another word that calls my attention, which is early, because I'm thinking of that word initially. Okay, it could be that, but we're not sure. So an early talent for maths, building gadgets, okay. We see again, Shannon developed information theory, but shunned the resulting acclaim. Okay, and already I see this lovely word, acclaim, which makes me think about number 29, which is a synonym for fame. And we see that he shunned the resulting acclaim. Shunned is quite an advanced vocabulary word, so it shows that he did not want that acclaim. He was a bit embarrassed. He went away from that acclaim, and that would be a reference to his attitude. So I think this one is quite clear, and I would confidently say that number 29 is B because it references Shannon's attitude to fame. And we'll go down to paragraph C. Now I see Shannon again, so I think perhaps it could be the answer to the other Shannon question, although we also see Shannon located in paragraph D, so I'll keep reading. Shannon originally had for his work, which began when he was a 22-year-old graduate engineering student, okay? And this is interesting because the fact that it says 22-year-old graduate engineering student, with this I think a little bit about his background. I also see set out, which is an excellent phrasal verb for describing initial thoughts or things that people wanted to do in the beginning. So I think that this could perhaps be connected. If I read this again, a reference to what Shannon initially intended to achieve. I see here, he set out with an apparently simple claim to pin down something, okay. But if we look here at the last sentence, he discovered something surprising. Okay, so he discovered something else. He did not set out to discover something surprising. And this talks about random interference. I would say that it's quite close to number 32. However, if we look here, the fact that there is information such as information, random interference, and noise, this gives me a bit of a doubt because I could see these three keywords as going along with number 27, which is an explanation of the factors affecting the transmission of information. So you have to make a choice between number 27, number 32, and you have to think a bit logically, and you have to use some critical thinking skills. This is an example of how the matching information question type sets out to confuse the test takers. You see we have these 3 keywords included in this paragraph. However, notice that there's more information regarding Shannon's young career when he was 22 years old, to his initial aspirations and what he set out to do. And so for that reason, I would say that C is best for number 32, not number 27. And number 27, this information here is really just a trick to confuse you. Okay, so let's clear our drawings and move down to paragraph D. Again, I want to just look at, and first I see here interfere, which was something that we looked out in our key information. We see interfere with information, okay? And then I want to look again for information because I had factors affecting transmission of information. Already I'm thinking that 27 could be good with D. Let's go ahead and look more. We see information here. Information can pass along communication channels while remaining error-free. This is also quite important. This rate depends on the relative strengths of the signal. So these are all details on what affects the transmission of information. And you see how even though 27 was a possible solution for paragraph C, it fits much better with paragraph D. And we're looking at the transmission of information. Pass along is a great phrasal verb and synonym for transmission. And so I would say quite confidently that number 27 would fit perfectly with paragraph D. So I'll go ahead and clear. We'll move down again to paragraph E. We're almost finished here. And I'm going to go ahead again and just scan for the keywords that we looked at. Okay, now I see something here. Error detecting system. This looks very specific. Okay, and it gives you a very detailed account. It says here, it ensures supermarket checkout lasers can read the price on a crumpled bag of crisps. This is a very important and interesting sentence because you see that it's very, very detailed and it kind of sticks out. You also see here transmitted is a good keyword. So if I look back here at my information, I see details and a detailed account. And these two things are quite interesting. Now, I would say that this sentence that is quite detailed would match with number 30 and 31. And so we've already used 31 for number A, and I was quite confident in placing number 31 with paragraph A. So let's just see if this would work. We see details of a machine capable of interpreting incomplete information. Now, the fact that it has machine here, and we see supermarket checkout lasers, that is an example of a machine, and this is quite detailed in its explanation. And so I would say that E is better for number 30 and not number 31. Number 31 I would keep at paragraph A. All right, so paragraph F, I'm going to again just look for keywords, and the first thing that comes out is redundant. I catch this word, and this is a really great example of how steps 1 and 2 can really prepare you for scanning the passage, because redundant was a synonym that we came up with in the second step. It was here in number 28, an example of how unnecessary information can be omitted. And if you remember, we said unnecessary could be something like not necessary or redundant, and omitted, we said could have been gotten rid of or taken out. We were thinking of some phrasal verbs. However, right before this word, you see stripping out, which of course is another example to say omitted, to get rid of. And so already just with these two keywords, I'm very confident that number 28 would be F. But I just want to read ahead and make sure that it's talking about an example, just so we're 100% confident with our answer. And This gives us an example. For example, it says here, as mobile phone text messages, shows you an example of how data can be left out. And so we see Shannon showed how to calculate this limit. I would say that this is a very good example of how unnecessary information can be omitted, and I would definitely put F as number 28. All right, so we have answered all of the questions. We've looked at some ways that keywords were out there to trick us. And so now let's just review and write out what we decided for each of these questions. So for 27, we said D. For 28, which we just completed, we said F. For 29, we said B. For 30, we had E. For 31, we had A. And then for 32, we had C. All right, now let's see if this is correct. I'll go down here to show answers, go back up, and yes, we were correct. So D, F, B, E, A, and C. I'll go ahead and clear our screen. And so if you look here, it shows you exactly where the keywords and the information was found with a brief description. And this is basically everything we have just gone over. Again, keep in mind that there are some tricks out there like we saw, so it's possible to be a bit confused and finding keywords in different paragraphs. If it comes down to it and you experience this on the test, don't be afraid to use a bit of critical thinking skills like we did with the 2 questions here, and just see which paragraph makes more sense for the given piece of information. Great job. To close our lesson, I'll review some very handy do's and don'ts for the matching information lesson. First off, do read the questions first and circle or underline any keywords. Now, this was step 1 and 2 in our example, and like I said, with time and practice, you can combine these 2 steps. Also, do comprehend the information in the questions in order to maximize your understanding. And a great way to do this is to paraphrase and find synonyms before you read the text. Then scan the passage, looking for information provided in the questions. Remember to read with a headlight, as we did in the example. And lastly, do write the paragraph letters in your answer sheet. Do not write any words. Now for our don't read the passage first. You never want to read blindly. Second, don't read for general information. You're looking for specific information, and that's why we are scanning. Don't get confused with synonyms from the questions located in the incorrect paragraphs, similar to what we saw on our example. Just because you see a synonym or a keyword in a certain paragraph, this doesn't always mean that it's the correct option, so beware of that. Also, don't repeat any letters if not instructed to do so in the directions. And lastly, don't write any words in your answer booklet for this question. Just write the paragraph letters. All right, thanks again for joining me. I hope that this lesson has clarified some doubts, some lingering questions regarding the matching information section, and I hope that you feel more confident to approach this question type in the exam. If you'd like to do some more reading practice, feel free to visit us at www.bestmytest.com/IELTS. Again, that's www.bestmytest.com/IELTS. Thanks, and see you for the next lesson.